This is my first meetup. I'm about 6 months with League, so I have to say I'm tremendously impressed. I am impressed with the turnout, and I have been meeting all of these amazing people, and I'm seeing old familiar faces in the crowd too, so this is awesome. So I was also told not to do necessarily a League pitch, although it's very hard to do when you're so excited about your business. But what I really want to talk about is why our business is so pertinent today. And because I'm coming to the business with over 20 years in the space that this particular startup is looking to disrupt, I like to think I come with some credibility to talk to some of the challenges that the industry is facing, as well as some of the tremendous opportunities there are for change, because I think there's just a massive amount of opportunity here. So I'm going to start with a question. So for everyone in the audience, how many of you have had an experience with a traditional benefits plan with your organization? Hands up high. Okay. How many of you would describe that experience as in any way innovative?
I think it was a big feather quill.
There you go, big feather quill, 45-page booklet, sort of shoebox of claims and receipts, because it's a bit of a pain to actually submit those claims and to be reimbursed for those claims if you're actually covered for those claims. So that's a pretty common experience, and I think it's not to say that the traditional carriers are not trying to do things to change and to innovate. You've got tremendously smart people in all of those carrier environments. I have a few of them out here in the audience today, so shout out to former colleagues. I think the challenge is that it's very difficult in large corporate organizations, particularly in risk-averse, highly governed industries like the insurance industry or the healthcare industry. Can everyone still hear me? Yeah. Technical problems. I can talk loud. Can you hear me if I talk loud?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I can just go on, sure. So, I lost my train of thought. Difficult. Yes. There you go. Yeah, so I think traditional carriers aren't necessarily, not aware, very aware, right? And looking to do things to change that experience. But it's a risk-averse environment. It's, not necessarily from a resource perspective easy to change the technology that exists. That's been around in many cases for, 50, 70, 100 years in some cases with some of these large carriers. So I personally believe that the change is not necessarily going to come from within those organizations. The change is going to come from startups and organizations that are taking a piece of that puzzle and really sort of pushing that change forward, ground up. So it's much more difficult to try and sort of, reorient a very large, Titanic-type organization than it is to, start from the ground up and pick a challenge, and particularly, with a digital platform that allows you to create an integrated experience to provide something new to consumers. And that's exactly what we're doing at League. So why I think that League is sort of at, in the perfect space at the perfect time, and really why I decided to make the change from a large carrier environment. And I will add, I've spent my whole career in the health benefits space. I spent the last 7 years in that large traditional environment. But I started my career starting a small organization that grew to a larger organization that we eventually sold to Sun Life. That's how I went into that environment, ran that business for a number of years, took a couple of different roles, really always focused on how can we use workplaces as a vehicle to drive positive health change. So I come at sort of the health conundrum with that particular lens, having been the lens that I looked throughout my career. So I want to talk to you about why, a couple actually of drivers that are really influencing and changing the way that workplaces need to think about health benefits, need to think about insurance, and the opportunity that exists there. So first being workplace demographics.
So the demographics are changing significantly in the majority of workplaces. I can tell you, having just come into a startup environment, and we've got about 75 people in our organization now, the majority of those individuals are in the Millennial Generation, whole lot younger than me, and just think and work very differently. And I think that's very important when you think about health benefits. Healthcare needs are changing as well. So you would think that in workplaces with these younger populations, the healthcare needs would be lessened. That's not necessarily the case, and I'll talk about that for a minute. And then also emerging health trends. So digital tools, resources, access to information is really changing the landscape of how people get health information, how they can actually manage their health through tools and resources being provided in workplaces. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here as well. So when I talk about the changing demographics, so many of you may be aware, today 40% of workplaces are made up of the Millennial Generation. I talked about thinking differently,
Looking for different things from benefits plans. So really, what we see here, and I'll just speak to some of the aspects on the slide. So really with the Millennial Generation, what they're looking for from their benefits plan is quite different than what you would see if you actually, sort of surveyed or polled the Boomer generation. So baby boomers really, when they thought about health insurance or health benefits plans, really you were looking for that peace of mind and that coverage should any type of unforeseen illness or condition occur, wanting to just know that that security was there and having an expectation over time that the employer would subsidize or support that peace of mind. What's happening now as you sort of shift down the demographic curve, what we're seeing is, millennials and even Gen Z coming into the workforce have a much higher expectation on their employer to help them manage their health. So what they're looking for from a health benefits plan, it's very different, right? So I want to be, if I'm a millennial, so I'll put on my millennial hat, if I want to be sort of managing my health and looking for my employer to support me in doing so, I want the flexibility to decide what I need from my health benefits plan to help me manage my health. My needs are going to be quite different than your needs, And so I want flexibility within my plan. I want to be able to personalize my plan. So traditional benefits plans are typically what's called a defined benefit. So if you think about paramedicals or all of those services like chiropractic, massage, etc., there's typically a defined level of access or a defined level of coverage. So one of the big opportunities that we see at League is to create more of a defined contribution model. So the employer decides how much they want to indicate or allocate to each of their employees, and as an employee, I can decide how I want to spend those same dollars. Okay, and if I want to spend all of those dollars on, let's say, massage benefits because I have lower back pain, and that's a preventative tool for me, or I want to do resilience and mindfulness training so I can better manage stress, I have the ability to do so, and it's not restricted in my plan. So that's a very important distinction that we're seeing with that changing demographic as well. And again, I think it's a very important opportunity for a startup like League. What's also interesting is if you fast forward less than a decade from now, 75% of the workforce will be that same generation. And if you think about how that's going to drive requirements and drive the needs of health benefits plan, tremendous, right? So the majority of our workforces will just think completely differently. And what's also interesting is that we've done a number of surveys over the years with employers and asked employers, why do you offer health benefits plans to your employees? What do you think the number one reason is that employers indicate in terms of why they offer health benefits? Attract and retain, yes. Someone said expectation, yes. So those are all the reasons, not the number one reason.
They have to.
Employees healthier so they can keep having work.
Exactly. Health and productivity. So the majority of employers indicate that the reason they offer health benefits plans is to promote health and productivity within their organizations. the majority of plans do very little in terms of how they're structured to actually promote health and productivity today. And so again, I think that's an opportunity, and it's a shift that we're going to start to see towards more of that defined contribution model. I wanted to touch on chronic disease as well in terms of a driver of this change. And so these are really the top 3 areas that drive the majority of costs within plans. So the majority of claims would be categorized in these areas. So mental health, pain management, or what the industry refers to as musculoskeletal, as well as cardiovascular health. And again, you would think with the changing demographic and this additional focus on health, we would perhaps be seeing a decrease in claims. What's happening today is not the case. So the number 1 cohort driving claims for mental health, 19 to 25-year-olds. And to a large extent, this is the biggest driver in most plans. So some large organizations in Canada, 60% of the cost of their plan, so drug and disability combined as the 2 key benefits, are coming from mental health diagnoses. So a significant area for us to be really paying attention to and providing resources in. I'll flip over to cardiovascular health as well. Again, you would think it would be the larger, sort of older cohort. The 2 cohorts that are driving increased claims and conditions are sort of the oldest age band within workplaces and the youngest age band. And within that youngest age band, many of those are really preventable illnesses or preventable conditions such as type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, 80% preventable. By changing lifestyle, nutrition, physical activity, and cutting out smoking, 80% of type 2 diabetes can be prevented. And the largest growing cohort is inactive, younger generations. So again, I think it's an opportunity for education. It's an opportunity for workplaces to provide the right programs to promote good health, and it's an opportunity for health benefits plans to also, provide that flexibility for individuals to get access to a weight management program or a life coach or fitness resources. Last piece I wanted to touch upon was emerging health trends, and I know I'm likely speaking to an audience of experts as it relates to health tech and health tech trends. So, and I'm probably running short on time at this point, but what I did want to say here is that, again, as a very educated audience, you would know, people are able to access information at their fingertips today. What's unfortunate is that a great deal of this information is not valid or credible health information. So there's an opportunity there to be able to put in an integrated way, and we're doing this at LEAD, content, health practitioners, professionals at the fingertips of individuals so that they can get access to credible health practitioners and credible health resources to educate them on how to manage their health rather than going to, Dr. Google. Personalization, another really key opportunity. And if you think about pharmacogenetics, it's an area that I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity within health benefits plans for as well. There is a great deal of lost time and, poorly or incorrectly prescribed situations where an individual is actually going off on disability, let's say, because they still have not been able to lock down the right treatment plan. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity within the pharmacogenetics space to support better outcomes and also, to support a better plan experience. So, to summarize, health benefits today, and I think if I take it back to the first question I asked, I would like to think that these are probably some of the ways that you would sort of express or describe the health benefits experience of the past. Unfortunately, costs for most plans are rising, premiums are rising year over year based on poor experience as well as new entrants into the drug space in particular. So some of these high-cost specialty drugs, biologic drugs, are really driving plan costs, although only 5% of the population are perhaps accessing, those particular medications. So lots of opportunity in the drug space and many changes taking place as well. the out-of-date experience as it relates to getting information about what's covered and submitting a claim needs to change. The lack of flexibility, so I talked about defined contribution, defined benefit. And really, for most individuals, you're not necessarily encouraged to use your health benefits plan or your health insurance. It's actually, it's an environment that's almost structured to discourage use, right? So difficult to understand, difficult to actually use that product or that benefit or that service when you do need it the most. I'm sure we could all share examples of how frustrating that could become when you know you have this resource, but you just can't necessarily access it in the way that you need to. So essentially what we're saying is that's no longer a fit for today's consumer. What we see at League is that the future for health benefits needs to be consumer focused. So we need to put the consumer first rather than perhaps, the plan sponsor that's making the benefit decision. So they're important as a consumer, certainly, but also we need to think about the end user, the member, and what's going to best support their needs and how to provide that personalization and flexibility, how to make it easy. How do you make it simpler to understand what's covered, and how do you make it faster to get paid back on a claim? Let's say you have been out of pocket, or even better, how can you digitally process that claim at point of sale at your pharmacy or with your practitioner with no out-of-pocket necessarily expense or claim that you have to resubmit? So we see very much a 100% digital environment in the future, and I will wrap up there, but I'm happy to take any questions if we still have time.
Thank you first for being so patient. We are a startup event, so we make some mistakes, and next time we will definitely have a bag of AA batteries with us. Any questions for Lori?
The first question is, what was your thinking process to move from a large organization, risk-averse, to a rather risky world of startup?
So it's such a great question. It is the most frequently asked question that I've had in the last 6 months. So many people have asked me why I decided to make that change, and I can tell you with 100% certainty it wasn't because I didn't have a great environment that I was working in previously. Amazing culture, great environment. For me, I've always been passionate about change. I've always been passionate about innovation. With the first organization, that I worked with and began, had the ability to, sort of experience what it's like to build something and grow it and make quick decisions and change things quickly and really respond to customer needs in a way that it's just difficult to do in a large organization. So for me, I actually met Mike Serbinas and the management team at League. I was tremendously inspired by the massive undertaking that they were, basically had already started. They were about 1.5 years in of taking on this challenge of trying to disrupt, not just one, but technically 2 industries, so the insurance industry and the healthcare space. I found that so inspiring, and because it had been something that I've been doing for 20 years, I thought, I first met Mike and the team because I wanted to partner with them at Sun Life, and I brought them in to tell us about League and how could we partner. And what eventually happened is that I just became so inspired that, long story short, I decided that I wanted to be part of building this disrupting force. And it's a very different environment. That's a whole other story, but eye-opening, very different environment, yes.
Any other questions?
Hi, Laurie. My question is around growth. So obviously Elite has been growing really quickly, but taking a company from 10 million to 100 million is very different from taking a company from 100 million to $1 billion. So I'm just curious, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges to develop those capabilities?
So also a great and very timely question. We just finished a 3-year planning cycle. So getting at exactly how we're going to get to that point. And I would sort of categorize into 3 things in terms of the challenges. So number 1, we're in a highly regulated, highly governed environment. So ensuring that we really get it right in terms of things like, HIPAA compliance, and as we go into the US, taking a look at their regulatory environment. So getting it right from a go-to-market perspective, from a regulatory and governance perspective, we're taking that very seriously. Every one of our inside sales folks, whether they're talking about benefits or not, are getting licensed. So we're learning from what we're seeing from some other organizations and some of the bumps that they've hit, and we're taking that seriously. I would say the second thing is being really disciplined about what we do and what we don't do. There is so much opportunity for change in this space. We could do so many things, right? And we have this very passionate, very motivated management team. We all have things we want to do. We all have things we want to put on the development roadmap. And I can say that, when I sit in the room with many, many developers who can build the things that I've thought about wanting to build in the industry for many years, it gets really exciting. But I also understand, we need to pick our spots. We can't do everything, right? Because we want to move fast, we want to grow fast, we want to hit the consumer need, but we can't be all things and do that well. And then I think the last piece is just really thinking about in terms of how we grow our team, also being really diligent about making sure that we stay true to the amazing culture that we've built. It's one of the reasons I think that we've been as successful as we've been to date. So we are still being incredibly thorough with who comes into the organization and the process to vet and hire. And I would say that's critical to getting that growth, because if we start to disrupt and mess up from a culture perspective, we're just not going to be the high functioning, high performing, highly passionate, motivated team that's going to get us there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Last one.
Hi. I was just wondering.
Hi, I was just wondering, you listed a lot of really good reasons for plan sponsors to choose League over bigger companies. What do you think is maybe the number one reason that they would choose League, considering companies like Sun Life are starting to offer flex plans, become innovators in technology, and so on?
So the number 1 reason a customer would choose Leap, that's tough to just give you one. I would say that the number 1 reason is it's not necessarily the plan, right? So we have a traditional, insured peace of mind plan. We have health spending accounts. We have a health marketplace. So if you take each of those things separately, it's not necessarily that innovative or unique. It's the combination of all of those things, as well as some of the tools that we're building in and sort of layering on top, again, via this fantastic digital platform. So things like care concierge services. So you can actually just reach into the app and get navigation advice as it relates to where to find resources in the healthcare system, or what's the right practitioner given the need that you have that you'd like to access in the marketplace. So getting that guidance, as well as things like doctor on demand services, e-prescribing, dropship, et cetera. Those are all on our roadmap. And I think it's that combination. So over time, it's just going to become a more and more integrated, health-focused, personalized experience.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Lori.